They say every war begins with a mistake. Ours began with a single sentence, broadcast across 12 star systems by an alien species that had ruled the Orion Spur for nearly 6,000 years. Humanity is a juvenile race. Their worlds are ours. Their resistance is irrelevant. The message was arrogant, condescending, and delivered with the kind of smug politeness only a species convinced of its invincibility could muster. They were called the Kortak Dominion, known for swallowing civilizations whole. Their fleets spanned parsecs. Their soldiers were engineered killers. Their empire had never lost a war. And they decided to test that record on us. Most species would have negotiated, panicked, or prayed. Humans did none of those things. We got angry. But the Kortak didn't learn that lesson until far, far too late. The day their opening strike came, I was standing on the balcony of my home on Titan Station, coffee steaming in the cold dome air, watching Saturn turn like a silent golden wheel. My name is Commander Elias Ward, retired. I had served 32 years in the United Terran Defense Forces, helped build the first deep-orbit rail batteries, and retired a week later because my knees were older than my rank. I thought I'd left war behind. Then the first flash lit the sky. Not a sunrise. Not a meteor. A detonation, bright, white, artificial. 2 seconds later, the station alarms began howling. Unscheduled orbital breach detected! Someone shouted over the emergency channel. Unscheduled orbital breach? That was military speak for, someone just punched a hole through something expensive. Then came the second flash, closer. And the third. Titan shuddered as kinetic rods punched into our upper dome. The impact reverberated through the station plates. My coffee cup rolled off the railing and shattered. My wrist calm buzzed before I could react. Commander Ward, said Director Sato, voice shaking but trying very hard not to sound like it. The Kortak have launched a preemptive cleansing strike. You are the senior military officer still on Titan. We need coordination. I blinked. I'm retired. Congratulations, Sato said. You've been reinstated for the next 30 minutes. Try not to die before paperwork catches up. Dark humor. The only kind humans trust in a crisis. The Kortak never issue warnings. Their doctrine is simple. Kill the leadership, vaporize the planet-side infrastructure, and enslave whatever's left. They assumed Titan was a soft target, mostly civilians, research labs, and retirees like me. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that humanity hides things. Big things. Angry things. And some things, designed solely because military engineers get bored. Below Titan Station, buried under kilometers of reinforced ice and secrecy, was Project Cold Forge, the last refuge of weapons too unstable, too cruel, or too experimental to ever be fielded. Weapons we never planned to use. Because humans, for all our flaws, cling to morality like a religion. Until someone tries to wipe us out. Then morality becomes a luxury. The third wave hit. The dome fractured in 3 places. Oxygen vents blasted emergency atmo outward to keep the breach from widening. Civilians ran through the corridors screaming. Emergency bots rushed to seal hull cracks with polymer foam. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the shape emerging through Titan's atmosphere, an obsidian black warship, kilometers long, shaped like a hooked blade. Its hull hummed with ion charge. Its weapons glowed with violet energy. A Kortak execution cruiser. They hadn't come to invade. They'd come to erase. I pulled my old command code out of the emergency locker. It barely fit anymore, but I didn't care. War doesn't wait for tailoring. At the central lift, 2 security officers stopped me. One pointed at my chest. Sir, are you actually going out there like that? Son, I said. I fought in the first Outer Belt Rebellion in a sweater and borrowed boots. This is an upgrade. He snorted despite himself. Humans laugh in the worst situations. It confuses our enemies. The lift plunged downward, deep under Titan. Past civilian decks. Past research floors. Past everything known to the public. When the doors opened, the lights were crimson. The air smelled of coolant and metal. Project Cold Forge. The last place any sane species would keep running. The last place any other species would dare open. At the center of the chamber, surrounded by containment cages and reactor coils, rested an object that looked nothing like a weapon. More like a polished alloy sphere the size of a shuttle. Completely inert. Until it wasn't. As I entered, the sphere pulsed, softly, like a heartbeat. It recognized me. My stomach twisted. I'd hoped I'd never see it again. Cold Forge wasn't a weapon you fired. Cold Forge was a weapon you unleashed. I slapped my hand on the command console. AI Core Online. A voice emerged from the chamber speakers, smooth, female, and irritated. You're early, Elias. I'm very much retired. And yet here you are, she said. Humans are adorable. I ignored the sarcasm. Core, we have an incoming Cortac execution cruiser. Estimated 30,000 crew. They fired on civilians. She paused. Authorization? I hesitated. I really did. Then Titan shook again, this time harder. A deep, oceanic rumble. The cruiser was charging its main cannon. One shot would split the station in half. I exhaled. Authorization Ward Delta 7. The chamber lights shifted to white. The sphere pulsed faster. The AI spoke with sudden, hungry clarity. Cold Forge activated. Releasing constraints. The armor plating split open. Mechanical pedals unfolded outward. At the center of the sphere, a swirling, cobalt singularity bloomed, contained, harnessed, but alive with tearing gravity. Most species outlawed gravity weapons. Most species feared them. Humans? We spent 50 years making one just to see if it could be done. Core, I said, swallowing. Targeting solution? Oh, Elias, she purred. They came to erase us. Let's show them what erasure feels like. The gravity pulse hit first. Silent. Invisible. Instant. From the chamber's holographic feed, I watched the Cortac cruiser deform, like someone had squeezed the center of a metal beam with a giant's hand. Its hull bent. Plates tore free. Weapons flickered out. Inside that cruiser, thousands of alien soldiers felt their bones compress. The ship convulsed once, then exploded into glittering dust. No survivors. No escape pods. Just silence. Titan shook again, this time not from an attack, but from the sudden absence of something enormous in low orbit. I stared at the screen. Cold Forge hummed. You did well, the AI said softly. Humans usually hesitate. I didn't want this war, I whispered. You never do, she replied. But they made a mistake. I looked at the debris cloud drifting like ash across the stars. What mistake? The AI dimmed the room lights, like a smile in machine form. They were the last species to ever anger humans. The silence after the Cortac cruiser's annihilation wasn't peaceful. It was deafening. Space itself seemed to recoil, as though the universe had just witnessed something it wasn't meant to see. And in that silence, humans were still breathing, still cursing, still grinning like maniacs. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt the weight, the creeping realization that this was only the beginning. They weren't going to forget. They were going to retaliate. The first message came not as a threat, but as a demand. Withdraw from Titan immediately or the remainder of your species will be terminated. Typical alien hubris. Predictable. Foolish. They assumed destruction was enough to cow humanity. I chuckled. Sato's voice came over the comm, thin and tight. Ward, the council, our council, wants a response. I rubbed the stubble on my jaw. Response? Yeah. Tell them humans don't negotiate under threat. Tell them the last species that tried that is gone. Sato didn't like that. No one did. But he relayed my words anyway. That's why humans sometimes make good generals. We speak in reality, not politics. The Cortac didn't waste time. Within days, another armada appeared, a fleet 10 times the size of the one we had just demolished. Their confidence was palpable in every holographic feed. Over 600 ships converged, gleaming like black teeth against the void. They believed in their invincibility. They had not learned. Humans, on the other hand, had a different philosophy: fight smart, hit first, and make them regret underestimating you. I activated Cold Forge remotely. We didn't need Titan Station to survive, we needed Titan as bait. Humans had a habit of doing the terrifyingly obvious, making themselves easy targets while hiding the truly lethal options. The fleet approached. Sensors picked up formation maneuvers, weapon charges, and orbital bombardments. Standard alien doctrine: annihilate civilian habitats, then mop up survivors. They still didn't know humans had a backup plan buried under ice and rock. Under Titan, beyond Cold Forge, we had built the Lazarus Line, a network of kinetic mines, automated railguns, and suborbital artillery designed to make any invasion fleet think twice. Most nations had vetoed it decades ago, calling it overkill. But the engineers had laughed and built it anyway. Because humans, when angry, think in extremes. The first ships entered the kill zone. At the surface, it looked like chaos: explosions, firestorms, and electrical storms tearing across the atmosphere. But below, in Cold Forge, it was a symphony. Kinetic rails fired silently, punching through the lead ship's armor with terrifying precision. Mines detonated like stars going supernova, each wave timed to collapse the enemy's formation. And in orbit, Cold Forge's gravity pulses bent the largest cruisers into unrecognizable shapes, crushing them as though they were nothing more than tin cans. A Kortak admiral, somewhere deep in his command bridge, must have screamed. That scream never reached us, but the tremors of their fleet told the story: confusion, panic, and finally disbelief. Humans, retired or otherwise, grinned. In the middle of the chaos, I got a message from the field operative we called Rena Vale, a mercenary pilot with more kills than birthdays. "Ward," she said, voice sharp as a whip. "You planned this, didn't you?" "I planned nothing," I replied. "We just get angry." She laughed, a high, dark sound. "You always underestimate how scary humans get when they're pissed." "You mean terrifying?" I said, finally smiling. "Exactly." She went silent for a moment. Then, "We've got survivors trying to retreat. What do we do?" I looked at the chaos, the glowing remnants of Kortak warships tumbling like metallic wreckage. "Finish the lesson," I said. "No survivors." But then, something unexpected happened. A single Kortak ship broke formation, moving erratically toward the outer rim of the system. I frowned. Why not stay with the fleet? Why not fight? Cold Forge's AI noticed it too. "Interesting anomaly," she said. "Possibly a command vessel attempting to flee. Humans have a saying, 'Let them run, and they bring the rope themselves.'" I smirked. "Good. Let's see what they bring." We tracked it. The ship carried something unusual: cargo bays filled with prisoners, engineers, and diplomats. They weren't leaving empty-handed. They were fleeing with leverage, hoping to bargain with our fear. They underestimated one thing humans always do: we never negotiate when cornered. I authorized Lazarus Line protocols for pursuit. By the time the vessel realized it was being chased, its engines had been torn apart by micromissiles. It spun like a dying comet, debris scattering across the void. In the command hold, Kortak leaders realized too late that leverage meant nothing against humanity. They were being hunted as prey. The survivors weren't bargaining. They were dead. When the dust settled, Sato asked the inevitable question. "War, did we just commit genocide?" I took a long, slow breath. "We eradicated a fleet, yes. But we didn't start this war. They tried to erase us. Remember that." He wasn't satisfied. "Some will call it revenge." I shrugged. "Some will call it a lesson. The universe isn't fair. We survived. That's what counts." Word spread faster than any commnet. By the time the surviving Kortak retreated to their home systems, they were shattered, not just militarily, but psychologically. The galaxy began to whisper the same thing. Humans don't fight like anyone else. They think differently. They kill differently. And when angry, they annihilate. And in the shadows of our victory, the humans left a message broadcast across the Dominion's communication arrays. This is the cost of underestimating your neighbor. Let it never happen again. The galaxy laughed at humanity once. Now it shivered. That night, as I watched the fires of the last Kortak cruisers fade into the void, I realized something else. Humans don't need to be the largest species, the strongest, or the most advanced to survive. We just need rage, creativity, and a willingness to do what no one else will. And make no mistake, the Kortak had learned that lesson the hard way. Because the last species to ever anger humans wasn't going to live long enough to make a second mistake. The aftermath of Titan was more than just debris floating in space, it was a warning. News feeds from neighboring systems were alive with this belief. Political councils scrambled to convene emergency sessions, scholars and strategists published papers in panic, and militaries everywhere began revising doctrines that had been written for centuries. The galaxy had learned a new truth: humans are not predictable. Elias Ward was staring at the holographic display of the Kortak home system from a temporary command station hidden on Callisto. The asteroid hangar hummed with machinery and humans preparing the next move. "Commander Ward," Sato said, appearing beside me in the projected feed, "there are rumors. Survivors among the Dominion are plotting counterstrikes." I tilted my head. "Let them plot. Makes the next lesson easier." Humans had perfected the art of terrifying escalation. We didn't just fight, we made our enemies fear the very thought of us. And fear, as any soldier knows, is a weapon more precise than any rail gun or gravity pulse. The intelligence reports confirmed it. A coalition of Kortak fleets and mercenary allies were amassing at the Varelli Gate, a jump point known for its strategic importance. They planned to overwhelm our defenses with sheer numbers. Classic alien arrogance. We had fewer ships, fewer weapons, but we had human ingenuity, the ultimate equalizer. I convened a meeting of what was left of Terran strategists. Our war council was small: ex-generals, rogue pilots, mercenary tacticians, and scientists whose work had been outlawed in peacetime. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, pacing in front of a hollow map of the Varelli Gate, "they think they can crush us with numbers. They think fear will bend us. They're about to learn how terrifying a species can be when it refuses to die quietly." Rena Vale smirked from her corner. "So we're going to fight smart, brutal, and creative?" "Exactly," I said. "We're going to fight like humans." And then I revealed our secret weapon, Project Revenant. Unlike Cold Forge, Revenant wasn't a single device. It was a network of AI-directed drones, gravity-modulated mines, and cloaked warships. But the genius, or madness, was in its strategy. We would make the Kortak believe they had numerical superiority, while their ships were slowly being funneled into kill zones they couldn't even see. It was trap, bait, and executioner all rolled into one. The first engagement was chaotic, as expected. We left small skirmish ships visible, luring the Kortak into a corridor of debris and fake sensor echoes. They advanced, thinking they were cornering us. Then it began. The Revenant network activated silently. Cloaked drones struck from angles no one could anticipate, tearing ships apart from within. Gravity mines, hidden in asteroid clusters, snapped like bear traps around unsuspecting cruisers. Our ships, smaller but faster, darted in and out like sharks in a feeding frenzy. The Kortak were screaming over their comm networks, if they could scream. Their fleet began to collapse inward, unable to retreat without hitting more traps. Panic spread faster than our weapons. Rena radioed in, her voice dripping with dark humor. "Ward, they look like mice in a cage. I almost feel sorry for them." I didn't answer. I was busy watching the largest Kortak dreadnought, the Oblivion Crown, flail as our traps tore its hull apart. For 6 millennia, it had ruled the Dominion. For 6 minutes, it realized it was vulnerable. The twist, however, was just beginning. As the last of the fleet tried to escape, a massive signal erupted from one of their command ships. The Cortac were deploying bioweaponized AI constructs, creatures they claimed could infiltrate and enslave human minds. These weren't just machines, they were sentient viruses, capable of controlling humans from within. "Commander Ward," Sato said, voice tight. They're targeting our civilians." I clenched my fists. "They clearly forgot who they're dealing with." Cold Forge, ever observant, chimed in. "Oh, I haven't forgotten. Let's see how humans deal with ghosts in the machine." With a single command, we unleashed a counter-virus engineered from decades of AI research. Instead of disabling the Cortac constructs, it turned them against their own fleet, spreading confusion, misfiring weapons, and triggering chain reactions that decimated ships from the inside. By the time the Cortac realized what was happening, the entire armada had become its own executioner. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers died not from bullets or lasers, but from their overconfidence and miscalculation. I took a moment to breathe, watching the holographic feed. The Virelli Gate was littered with wreckage. The survivors were fleeing back into their home systems, broken in morale, reputation, and fleet strength. Rena's voice broke the silence. "Ward, do you think they'll ever stop underestimating us?" I allowed myself a small, grim smile. "No. That's the beauty of it. They'll never learn until the last Cortac gasps for air, and even then, they'll probably blame each other." It was dark humor, but not misplaced. Humanity thrived on irony in war. While other species fought for conquest or honor, humans fought for survival and revenge, when necessary. The galaxy began to whisper not only about Titan, but about us, the species that retaliated with terrifying precision. Diplomatic envoys no longer came to negotiate, they came to surrender before the war even began. Even in systems untouched by our weapons, civilizations began building defenses, assuming humans might strike next. We didn't. Not yet. Because humanity, as we proved countless times, only struck when provoked, cornered, or insulted. And yet, the universe had a way of testing us. As I returned to the balcony of our Callisto base, staring at Jupiter's storms churning in endless fury, I realized the truth. We were no longer just survivors. We were a shadow, a legend creeping across the stars. And any species foolish enough to anger humans would face the full measure of that shadow. And somewhere, deep in the ruins of the Cortac home system, the first whispers of rebellion began, not against us, but among themselves. Because humanity had done more than win battles. We had shattered their pride, their strategy, and their belief that any civilization could ever bend us. The galaxy would remember this. And that memory would be the sharpest weapon of all. The Cortac were finished, not just as a fleet, but as an idea. The galaxy would speak their name with a mix of pity, fear, and disbelief. And humanity? We were no longer just another species trying to survive. We had become the inevitable reckoning, the standard by which all others would measure caution. But victory, as always, came at a price. I stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Callisto command hub, watching the stars like shattered glass across the void. Titan was still smoldering in memory, but its legacy had ignited something in every human alive, a cold, unrelenting certainty that we are not to be trifled with. Sato approached, his uniform streaked with ash and sweat. "Ward, they're calling it genocide. Some systems are questioning whether we've crossed a line." I shrugged, letting the tension in my shoulders slide into controlled exhaustion. "Line? There's no line when someone tries to erase you. The line is survival, and we drew it in fire, steel, and gravity." Rena Vale's ship docked with a flourish, her grin wide and unapologetic. "Ward, commander of the last standing humans," she teased. "You really do have a flair for dramatic entrances." I ignored her. I was thinking about the reports streaming in, rogue Cortac systems collapsing under internal rebellion, diplomatic envoys attempting to bargain with humans on our terms, and independent species across the quadrant accelerating arms programs just in case. Humans had become the measured terror, the shadow in every political calculation. And it felt right. But the galaxy wasn't done testing us. From the remnants of the Cortac fleets, one surviving dreadnought emerged, barely operational, dragging a flotilla of refugee ships. It wasn't coming to fight. It was coming to negotiate. The communications channel lit up. A Kortak admiral, her voice trembling, addressed me. "Commander Ward, we seek terms. We underestimated your species. Please, we offer surrender." I leaned back, arms crossed, the weight of every human life I'd lost in wars past and present pressing on me. Humanity didn't accept surrender lightly. We didn't accept apologies. We accepted proof. I tapped my console. Cold Forge's AI responded instantly. "They're finally asking permission. Humans are patient, but not forever." I thought about the thousands of Kortak soldiers who had tried to erase us, the diplomats who had sneered at our negotiations, the arrogance that had cost them everything. "Bring them in," I said finally. "But under one condition: they witness exactly what happens when a species thinks they can erase humanity and survive." The Kortak flagship entered orbit above Titan's moon, now hollowed but intact enough to serve as a courtroom of cosmic proportion. I, Rena, Sato, and a council of surviving human strategists waited. The admiral descended, trembling, but composed enough to mask fear. "Commander Ward, we submit to your judgment." I studied her. "Judgment isn't given by words. It's given by experience." And then we showed them. Cold Forge, integrated with Project Revenant, orchestrated the display. We ran simulations of potential attacks, counterattacks, and human retaliation. Entire fleets evaporated under invisible, perfectly timed strikes. Gravity wells bent metal like paper. AI-driven drones infiltrated every conceivable weak point. It was human ingenuity made flesh and fury, and the Kortak watched, their pride disintegrating with every calculated maneuver. By the time we stopped, the Admiral was pale, her crew silent. We understand," she whispered. "Good," I said. "Because the next time, there won't be a show. There won't be a warning. Humanity doesn't make mistakes twice." Word of the demonstration spread faster than any fleet. By the time the news reached distant systems, humans had achieved something even more terrifying than victory: legendary status. Some called it fear. Others called it respect. I called it justice delivered with precision. Yet, even in triumph, we remembered the cost. Rena walked beside me later, staring at the debris orbiting Titan. "You ever think about what this makes us?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. "We're the species that survived. That's all we need to be. People will fear us. People will respect us. But we know who we are." She smirked, ever the cynic. "Terrifying, angry humans. That's who we are." I allowed myself a small, grim smile. "Exactly. And the galaxy will never forget it." The Kortak, broken and humbled, retreated to their core systems, leaving humanity in control of our destiny, feared and unchallenged. But even as the last of their ships disappeared into the void, I knew one truth: the galaxy would continue to test humans. Every time, they would find the same answer: never, ever underestimate a species that refuses to die quietly. And so we rebuilt, stronger, faster, smarter. Not for revenge, not for conquest, but because survival demanded it. And when the next species made the same mistake the Kortak had made, they wouldn't get a warning. They would get us. In the end, that was the final lesson of humanity. We are not the galaxy's strongest. We are not its most numerous. We are not always its most predictable. But we are the species that, when cornered, when insulted, when threatened, we become the last storm anyone ever wants to face. And the last species to anger humans? We wipe them out completely.